Welcome into the Off-Brand Sports Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be doing a couple of deep dives on the Miami Heat as well as the Edmonton Oilers. So a couple of interesting teams. We'll see how we feel about them. But before we do that, we have some news to talk about because the Redskins look like they're finally close to changing their name. So what we've kind of done here is we'll talk about some of our stuff afterwards. But first, Marshall is going to read some of the name suggestions, and Zach and I have kind of refrained from looking so that we can react live. Marshall, what are some of the new team names going to look like?
All right, so I have like a list here. Some of the favorites, I'll go over the favorites first. Washington Redtails is presumably the favorite to get that name. And for people that don't know what a redtail is, it is a bird, but it's named after the World War II airmen, called the Tuskegee Airmen, who were the first African American fighter jet pilots. I like this. I think it's a nice homage to the history of African Americans in combat. I know Billy was kind of talking some of the stuff though, even if it's an homage to someone, it could be down the line portrayed as something that's offensive.
Yeah, the example we used was the Chicago Blackhawks, and if you've been on Twitter, you'll see people calling for changes to the Blackhawks name and logo. And the thing about that is that the Blackhawks were named after a man. His name, I guess it was his tribal name, not his given name, was Blackhawk. He was the chief of his tribe, and they named the infantry unit he served in the War of 1812 the Black Hawk Unit, and that's kind of where the name came from for the Blackhawks. It's an homage to what they viewed as kind of an honorable guy, but people don't. The mob the mob of social media doesn't check that. They don't look at where the name came from. They say, well, that's a word that is associated with a particular group. That must be offensive. And if the Black Hawk Indian tribe finds it offensive, then I'm 100% on board. Okay, then it's time to change it. But if the general mob on Twitter is offended on their behalf, then I completely disagree. And I kind of get the sense that that's where some of those calls have been coming from. And so, getting back to what Marshall was saying, the Red Tails, I think you'd probably be safe. But, I mean, if I'm Redskins and I just had to deal with this whole debacle, I wouldn't risk it personally.
I think the easiest solution is to go to some of the last remaining Tuskegee Airmen and ask them if they would be honored or, offended by the name Redtails, and I think that solves a lot of stuff.
I think it definitely covers your bases, because then if the mob does say, hey, this is offensive, we can be like, really? Because we asked the Tuskegee Airmen, and they said, hey, we're all in favor of this.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily see why they wouldn't. It's sweet, an NFL team is naming their organization after us. I think that would be awesome. Exactly. If I was
the reason the
a member of the Tuskegee Airmen.
The reason
I was just gonna say if I.
Sorry, we're getting caught up here.
Go for it.
The reason the Redskins is offensive is because it's not an honorable thing to call someone a Redskin. If you in this scenario, it'd be we're calling them the Red Tails because we thought the Red Tails were something that was really awesome. That's not what the Redskins is right now, which is why it's so offensive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the easiest solution, in my opinion, is just to. I don't even know if there's any remaining Tuskegee Airmen, but I'm sure there's probably
at least
couple,
families
maybe.
of them or someone. Yeah,
just someone that was really close to their grandfather that was a Tuskegee Airman, and just ask them hey, we're thinking about making our team named the Red Tails as an homage to what your grandfather did in World War II. And if they're in favor for that, go for it, dude. I think that's awesome. But Redskins, yes, that should not be.
Yeah,
that should not be a name anymore. So
yeah, it's not great. All right, so what's the next name that's kind of there?
So the Washington Warriors. Don't really know how much I like that.
It's super generic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it also kind of still ties into the Native American track.
A little bit. I don't know. I feel because Warriors kind of multicultural.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But then their logo would be the arrow.
Oh, yeah. Then the logo kind of ruins that one. It's I don't know. I feel like I feel like their best course of action, like what I would do if I was running the franchise, is just go in a completely different direction.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of important for them to kind of keep the color scheme, though. In my opinion, just because, colors are associated with franchises a lot. And I mean, in the NBA, the colors change a lot, but in the NFL, like, can you name the last time a team has literally changed their color scheme? Other than maybe, like...
Yeah, I can't, honestly.
The Chargers this last season, I guess, sort of did.
I mean, it's the same colors.
But then
The Rams
But then they also, like, relocated.
Did, but, like, not... No one has drastically changed their color scheme.
But then those two teams have relocated. Like, a team that's been around in the same city for a long time, like the Broncos or the Packers or the Cowboys, like some of the big name NFL franchises have not changed their colors. So I think it's a little bit important for them
I don't know. I feel like
to keep their color scheme.
None of those teams have also changed their name either, though. So, like, I feel like you can...
Yeah.
If you want to fully rebrand, I feel like you could change your colors. But, like, you could stick with your colors if you want them. I guess it kind of depends on what your name is and, like, whether the colors kind of mesh with the logo.
So a couple more here. The Washington Hogs or the Washington Red Hogs.
Interesting.
Don't really think I like those too much.
They sound dumb. I don't like them.
Yeah. The Red Hawks.
Mm.
Don't really like that one either. The Washington Senators. But I'm pretty sure the Senators were in like a professional sports franchise sometime in the Washington area.
That one's my favorite one so far, is the Senators.
They're one in the Ottawa area. They could just they should just take the Ottawa Senators logo and be like, this is ours now. Just completely be like, we're the Ottawa Senators, but in Washington, and we play football.
And then so some of the other ones, and these are actually like, you can bet on these. The Presidents are plus 300. The Generals are plus 400. The Lincolns are plus 400. The Americans are plus 500. The Kings are plus 500. The Memorials are plus 500. This is the interesting one to me. The Capitals are plus 600. It's like, oh wait, did we forget there's an NHL franchise in Washington?
Honestly, probably.
The Veterans.
I wouldn't put it past the NFL to forget the NHL exists.
Yeah. The Veterans are plus 600. And then there's names behind the Capitals. The Jeffersons are 700. Roosevelt's are 700. The Monuments are 800. And the Arlingtons are plus 1,000.
Oh, gosh.
So, out of all those names, what is your guys' favorite?
The Senators is definitely my number one. And believe it or not, I know you guys said it was generic, but I think the Warriors is pretty good too. And then you could possibly keep your color scheme if you wanted to.
I kind of liked the Senators, and then maybe like I hate the Lincolns. That would sound
that's
real
bad.
But
Or like the Monuments.
Yeah, that's not good either.
that's
I like the Senators
The
the best.
Arlingtons was by far the worst.
Yeah, the Arlingtons. Is
like
terrible.
what?
I can't believe Capitals was like even an option on there.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's like
Like how
mid-tier
disrespectful.
option.
Yeah, it's.
My personal favorite though is the Red Tails.
I think the Red Tails is solid.
Just because I really like World War II history, and this is an homage. It's not racist in any way. And like I said, if you go to family members, or if there are remaining Tuskegee Airmen out there, if you go to them and they're okay with it, then, dude, the haters can't really say anything about that.
Yeah. I also like the Red Hawks. I know you said you didn't like it, but like I don't know. I played against the Red Hawks in roller hockey, and it's a name I remember, and they had a pretty cool color scheme, so you could do it right.
Yeah, the Red Hawks wouldn't be too bad. I think something that starts with red. It's kind of like when North Dakota changed their name from the Fighting Sioux to the Fighting Hawks. It's kind of like important to keep that first little aspect of your name.
Yeah,
in there.
Kind of keep your branding a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, so I mean, I feel like we were planning on kind of touching on how we feel about it after, but we did that a little bit. Do you guys have anything more to say about like how you feel about kind of the logo change in general?
Not really. I think it's important to do it. It's probably long overdue. I mean, I know in other sports like the Cleveland Indians are seriously considering it now too.
Yeah, and you guys explained it well. This isn't like the red. This is bad because it's not like a nice term like the Blackhawk would be. Overall, I think this is good. The freedom fighters, the freedom speech lovers will try to say this is like bad and that you shouldn't do this. But when it's like clearly something that you wouldn't say to another Indian, that's what something you wouldn't say. Then that's a good idea to change the name.
I agree. Yeah, I think this is overdue. I think it's offensive. I think we're all pretty. I feel like most people are kind of in the same boat on this one. This is kind of not super controversial. We all kind of agree. You know, this needs to have been changed already. It's good that they're finally getting around to it. Where does the line exactly fall? I think it's a good idea to maybe change the Indians. Not quite as offensive, but you know, a little bit borderline. And then there's there's way down the list. You know, I was actually looking at a list of like some of the Native American team names, and I found Thunderbirds, which I didn't actually know was. Like, I knew there were planes, and I knew, like, there had been mythical birds, but I didn't actually, I guess, never put together that it was kind of a Native American term, which is interesting, because, you know, that was my middle school mascot, and also growing up, the AAA team in our town, the AAA hockey team in our town was Thunderbirds, so I actually didn't realize that was also kind of a Native American reference. I don't think that one's particularly offensive, and I think most of the teams are also named after the plane more than anything, but, yeah, just, I think that there needs to be differentiation between what is an offensive usage of a Native American kind of cultural name and what is a good usage. So, like, don't call for all the change, you know?
I've also heard some stuff, like, about the Patriots needing to change their
Really?
name
I don't agree with that
Yeah,
at all.
that's too far.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I get it. America's not a perfect country.
Well, no, Patriot can be multicultural.
You're still allowed to be proud to be an American, okay?
You could be a British Patriot. Doesn't even have to be American.
Exactly. Patriots, like,
like with the logo in the context, it's pretty clear.
Well, it's an American sports team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, like, you're allowed to acknowledge that the country is not perfect. No country is perfect.
Of course.
And still be like, I'm proud to be an American. It's not a hateful thing to say that I'm proud to be an American. So
no, true.
That's
definitely not.
I disagree with that 100%.
Yeah, there's going to be probably a lot of teams that are going to be under fire just for random reasons.
Yeah, definitely. There's going to be this. I don't think many more teams, if any. I think the Cleveland Indians will probably end up having to change their name. I don't think anything else will follow. I think that, like, at least in the Big Four, I think that's about it. Do you guys have any, like, do you think that there are any other teams that will eventually have to change their name?
Not in the major four, I don't think so.
Definitely some teams in, like, juniors.
The Blackhawks are probably the most likely if you had to pick one in the NHL. I don't see it happening like what Billy was saying.
Yeah.
But, yeah, in juniors hockey or, you know, college football, that's a different story. But,
yeah.
I mean, Mississippi already, like, they're changing their flag. So.
Which is good. I mean, I feel like there's definitely been some good positive change in recent news. Like, I mean, like, a lot of the times when these movements happen, like, I don't know where I fall. It always depends. Like, you know, sometimes I'll have people that are like, everything that's offensive, it's time to change it. If it's moderately offensive, and there's some people that are like, no, never change anything. I think I fall in the middle somewhere on that spectrum where I'm like, I don't want to immediately change everything, but like when things are clearly offensive, it's like, yeah, we should change them. And I think that I think there's been some good progress this year, changing the right things that clearly need to be changed. So, I mean, 2020's been a down year, but I think one positive thing we can take is that we have made some steps.
Yeah, a lot of traction still to go, but yeah, we have made some traction.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and transition here into some more directly sports related things, and let's get into our bet segment. So, as it stands right now, Marshall has taken over the lead this week. My hot streak ended and his continued. He's sitting there at 3-2 with one bet pending. He's got $18.10. We all started with 5.
Let's go, Joey Chestnut.
Yeah, Chestnut got him the win. Like I
75 hot dogs, dude.
He broke his record too, which is impressive. That's a lot of hot dogs.
How do you eat 75 fucking hot dogs?
That's crazy. He's like pounding 4 of them at a time, like in the ESPN videos. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Then he like stuffs his buns in the water and just.
It's really disgusting to watch.
I don't like. It's interesting. It's definitely a talent. I couldn't do it. But yes.
I think I could put down 10 hot dogs.
I think so too. I think I could. But I don't know if I'd want to. I don't know if it'd be worth it.
I would probably immediately go to the bathroom.
Yeah. All right. So I am right behind Marshall. He, like I said, I was in first last week. He got the pass. I had a 3-episode hot streak. It snapped this week. I bet on 3 golfers to make the cut, and 2 of them missed, so I wasn't even close. I'm now at 500, but 1259, so I've more than doubled my money in that sense. Zach, coming up the rear here, can't seem to snap this drought on a 4-episode cold streak. Came super close this week. He had Webb Simpson finishing top 5, but he was 1 stroke back. Zach now sits at 1-4 with 1 pending, minus 275 for his total at the moment. So we'll hope he'll get that back up once we bet on some sports we know a little bit more about.
Yes.
But our charity pool's still looking positive at the moment. I don't know if I mentioned it, but our pool at the end of the year, whatever our total winnings are, will go to the charity of the winner's choice. Right now, Marshall in the lead. But this week we have some new bets. Marshall, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
All right, so my bet for this week, a little bit of a futures bet, but I'm taking Arenado. It was an odds boost on DraftKings, only like plus 70, but still I'm going to take it. Arenado is going to lead the NL in home runs by the end of the season. I like this pick a lot. Arenado's done it before, plus the Coors Field effect and a shortened season. I think he's going to come out a lot hotter than some of the other players. So plus 500 for Arenado to, take the home run league at the end of the season in the NL. So that's my bet there.
All right, Zach, what is your bet?
All right, so as Billy told you guys, I'm on a little bit of a cold streak. So I took Tottenham versus Everton in the EPL. I took Tottenham to win, plus 107. So hopefully that turns out to happen because I need a win here.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that bet because I basically did the same thing. I just went a step further. I have Tottenham to win and score first. So I found the odds boost at plus 155. I figure, in soccer there's not a ton of comebacks, so if they win, it's probably because they scored first. So I'm hoping that pays off a little bit, and Zach and I are kind of on the rooting together here.
Right. I'm really cold, so I need a win.
I feel like you guys have been on the same little tangent for the last couple weeks, maybe.
One of them we bet on the same game, but we bet different. Like he bet on a tie, and I bet on a win. But yeah, we've been in the same ballpark for a couple times here.
You're betting on hot dogs.
Yeah, and Marshall's betting on hot dogs, and then baseball, so you can eat the hot dogs while you watch baseball.
A bunch of hot dogs tonight, boys.
What's the over/under on 7 hot dogs, Marshall?
Well, they're chili cheese dogs, so it's probably going under. But if it was an actual hot
dog, minus 150 on the under for 6.5 chili cheese dogs.
We'll go 5.
We'll get back to you.
5 chili cheese. Okay. I'm taking the under on 5.
We'll get back to you. I believe in you, Marshall. I'll take the over. We'll see how that goes.
Cheese dogs, boys.
All right, let's get into our deep dives. Starting in the NBA, we're looking at the Heat. How do the Heat stack up? Initial impressions, some star power, but not like superstar power. And then, I don't know, they just don't look particularly deep. What are your initial impressions of the Heat, Marshall?
I actually do think that they're deep. This is a team that kind of surprised me all season. Jimmy Butler's been a pain in the ass for every single team that he's been on, but for whatever reason, it looks like he actually fits on Miami. And they still have some guys that supports him. I really like Dragic and Bam. I can never say his name, but Adebayo. I can never say his name.
I just like calling him Bam.
Yeah, Bam. But then they also have some young guys. Tyler Hero. I really like. He's come out and played very well this season. I believe that it's his rookie season. Derek Jones Jr. Not necessarily impressed too much, but if you're looking at the future with the Heat, I think they have a really solid future, especially if Jimmy Butler can figure out to how to not be a locker room cancer on every single team that he plays on. This is an interesting team to me, but I don't necessarily see them making a deep run. But second round, probably where they're capping out for me.
Okay, what do you think of the Heat, Zach?
Yeah, they are an interesting team. They improved a lot. They finished in 10th last year, so to come back and be in 4th this year is a big improvement for them. Marshall touched on it. This Tyler Hero guy is he's a good rookie. They got a little bit of depth. They got Iguodala. He's aging, so I don't know how effective he's going to be in this playoff run. Yeah, like Marshall said, I thought that they could have been better than if they find the right matchup and everything goes right. I still think there's a possibility they could beat the Raptors. Like I don't know. I don't know too much about them. Jimmy Butler, Marshall touched, he's a really solid player. He just needs to learn how to be good in the locker room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
which
he's been on like 5 teams in the last 5 years, but finally, like maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the key to their turnaround this year. So.
Same with a
seems
lot
to
of
be making
teams, though.
strides,
That happened
which is good.
in Minnesota as well. Once Jimmy Butler came, they were solid.
No, he helped them. Like, dude, they were really solid before, and then he helped them implode. And then also, like, Anthony Towns had his own issues, couldn't play defense to save his life.
And wasn't there like Andrew Wiggins and them had a beef or something?
Yeah, dude. So that's the thing.
Right.
And then he goes to Philly. Philly absolutely underperforms like they should have.
Him and Ben Simmons had a beef as well.
Dude, he has a beef with everyone, and maybe the fact that there's no like other stars on this team is the fact that he's like actually fitting in.
Yeah.
That's an interesting take. That could be true though.
Dude,
Yeah, maybe he's a little bit of an ego thing.
I could see that. Jimmy Butler seems like that kind of guy.
Oh,
Like
dude, he is
super alpha male.
Yes, he's a very alpha. I'm pretty sure he'd have a beef with Braun because he thinks he's better.
Yeah, get out the way.
The problem is that when Jimmy Butler's your only star, how good, like, where do you cap out? And I think, like he needs to be able to play well with others because I don't think him as your only star is a championship team by any means. And he's got to kind of work his way. He either needs to get a lot better and become a LeBron, or he needs to be able to figure out how to play well with others.
He's like a perfect 2 or 3, like the second or third best player on an NBA team. But that doesn't necessarily work because he can't get along with the second or the first or second best players. So that's
exactly
a little bit interesting. But I don't love the Heat. I do like their turnaround, and I'm kind of rooting for Jimmy to actually fit in someplace because he's been in a revolving door of teams the last few years. I mean, maybe Pat Riley and Spoelstra actually just settled him down a little bit. But,
it'd be nice to see it work somewhere for sure.
Yeah. But this team, to me, I mean, they're pretenders. Like I have said a million times, there's not a whole lot of teams in the NBA that I'm going to evaluate as contenders. But yeah, the Heat are, like I said, probably maxing out at second round.
Yeah, I agree. I'm calling them pretenders. I don't think that they have. I don't think they have the star power or the depth. I think this is a team that they've got some work to do before I really see them as making any kind of noise. I think they might make the second round. I think they're just as likely to have a first round exit. We're gonna see how it plays out, but I would be very, very surprised to see the Heat make a deep run. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I'm also going to say pretender. Yeah, the NBA, especially in the East, doesn't have too many actual real contenders. This is a team that I would watch out for in the future, though. They have some players that are going to get good, and then hopefully they can, start contending. And hopefully Jimmy Butler finds his home.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk NHL. I'm excited to talk about the Oilers because, the biggest stars in the game are playing on the Oilers. You got McDavid and Draisaitl as your 1-2 punch, which is a ton of talent. This is a team, sometimes you don't have to be that well run to get good, and I think the Oilers are a perfect scenario of that. I don't think their management team has done a very good job. I think they've they've stumbled upon the best player in the world by getting McDavid first overall, and stumbled upon another top 5 player in the world by getting Draisaitl. I believe he was the 3rd overall pick the year before in 2014. So they've just managed they have that super, super high-end talent that's able to carry them, and which is why they're a top 5 team out west. But what is their ceiling? What are your initial impressions? What do you think of the Oilers, Zach?
Ceiling for this year, they're obviously a great team, a lot of speed. A big pickup that I think is a little bit underrated is Andreas Antonescu.
Yeah, double A.
This guy he's got wheels, to say the least.
Yeah.
This guy has got
talented
wheels.
third line center.
So the speed on the Oilers alone is top notch. Definitely one of the best in the NHL for sure. Yeah, they could definitely use some work on their depth. James Neal, yeah, definitely a lot of work. Their defense isn't strong either.
I like the top of their defense a little bit. I think their top 4 is all right. I like Bear. I think he's a solid young future guy. I think Larson gets a lot of hate that he does not necessarily deserve. I think he's another solid top 4 defenseman.
Yeah, he definitely deserves it.
I disagree.
He had 6
it
points
depends.
this year.
He had a down year, but sometimes people say like this.
He's 6 point
think of him
down
as like
year?
not an NHL defenseman. You know, I
Dude.
think that he's a reasonable second pairing defenseman.
A borderline second pairing defenseman, in my opinion, dude. 6 points.
That's unacceptable.
On a 1-for-1 trade with Taylor Hall, that is unacceptable.
And he obviously is not worth Taylor Hall, but
Dude,
you can't evaluate him solely versus Taylor Hall.
I think you can if it was a 1-for-1 trade.
No, when you're evaluating the trade, sure, then you can say they lost that trade, and that's not up for debate. But if you're evaluating whether or not Adam Larson is a good player, that's a different conversation.
He's an all right player. Like, he's a third pairing. If he was on the Avalanche right now, where would he be paired?
It depends. You could put him. I think he's right around the Ian Cole range. You know.
Yeah, so that's not that great. And Ian Cole had more points this year than Adam fucking Larson.
Yeah, he had more points, but like in an average year, you could expect Larson to have as many points too. It's not. This isn't his. This year was definitely bad. I'll give you that. But I think that he's still a second pairing defenseman on an average team.
I mean, dude, he's maxed the most points he's ever put up in a season is 24.
He's not a scoring defenseman though. It's not like it's not like
dude,
he's Tyson Barrie where you're expecting him to score goals. He's a defensive-minded guy.
But Adam Larson was also like a 3rd overall pick. I feel like he should be putting up even if
it wasn't that. It's still a disappointing pick, but it doesn't make you worse as a player because your pick was a disappointment.
I mean, I guess we would have to agree to disagree on that one.
I mean, if you're a top 4 defenseman, you're a top 4 defenseman. It doesn't matter if you're a 3rd overall pick that was a top 4 defenseman or a 50th overall pick that was a top 4 defenseman. You're still a top 4 defenseman. That's what he is today.
Okay, so I was talking to Zach about this last night. And I personally believe that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is a bust based off the quality of pick that he was selected on.
I completely disagree. Yeah, we had this Nugent-Hopkins debate a little bit yesterday, but let's get into it here.
So, I need some mathematician to come out and give me a formula. But in my opinion, if you're picking first overall, and there are 10 players in that same draft that come out to be better than you, I say that pick is a bust. Not to say that he's not a serviceable NHL player or even a second line center. That's great. He's an NHLer, but that pick was a bust based on the fact that there was 10 guys picked after that first overall pick that are better than you in that same draft class.
And I 100% disagree with that. To me, if you're a bust, it's because you got nothing out of the pick. Disappointment, yes. You're disappointed with the result of that pick. But a bust, to me, means that you got nothing. Nail Yakupov is a bust. You got nothing out of that. Didn't get any value. Nugent-Hopkins, no. If you tried to trade him for the first overall pick today, he decreased in value. That's definitely a disappointment. A big disappointment. I mean, you'd like that pick back. That doesn't mean he's a bust. A bust implies that you got at least to me, a bust implies that you didn't get anything out of that pick, and you did get something. You got a valuable asset out of that pick,
but
not as
it's a first
valuable as you would
overall
hope
pick,
for.
Really. That's like what you're kind of missing the point on. A first overall
I'm not
pick
missing
is,
the. I don't think you. I think we have a different definition of the bust, because a bust, outside of sports, in the world of sports, a bust is like if you bust, it means you got nothing.
There's a
And
little
Ryan
bit.
Nugent-Hopkins is absolutely not nothing. He is
No.
something. Disappointment.
This
yes.
is what you're
Major
missing the point on,
disappointment.
though.
Not a bust.
This is what you're missing the point on. The pick was a bust. The player is not a bust.
That doesn't make the pick was a disappointment, and the
No.
player's a disappointment. It's not a
No,
a
like-
bust implies that you didn't get anything out of it.
No, dude, that's. So what do you think? Is Eric Johnson a bust in that
No,
07 draft?
he's a disappointment.
I
He's a
would
disappointment. He is not a
highly
bust.
say that pick is a bust.
I
would
completely
1,000%
disagree.
say that pick is a bust. There's
But
probably
our
20
disagreement-
guys from that draft class that you would pick first overall.
Yeah, I agree.
above
Our
from Eric
disagreement
Johnson.
here is
So-
not on the caliber of player.
So the
our
St. Louis
disagreement is on our
Blues-
definition of the word bust.
No, the St. Louis Blues busted that pick. But whether
I
Eric
don't
Johnson,
agree.
he's a disappointment. But
I
the
don't-
Blues
okay,
busted
I
that
think-
pick.
Okay, we're never going to come to an agreement on this because our disagreement is not on the whether or not these picks were successful. Our disagreement is on the definition of the word bust, and neither of us are going to change each other's mind.
No, I understand what a bust is. A bust is, dude, but like I'm talking about two different things.
I
You have
don't.
a
I
pick-
think that
A pick? No, Billy, I'm talking about picks and players. A first overall pick,
I don't
you're
think that there's
supposed
a
to
distinction
fucking
there.
nail.
I don't agree that there's a distinction.
I think there's
that's the
absolutely
same,
a distinction.
It's the same thing.
No,
I think
I do
that
not.
if
Why is
a
that-
player
why
is
is
a
that-
if a pick is a bust, the player was a bust, and if a pick is a disappointment, the player was a disappointment.
No, dude.
I don't
but-
think that there's a distinction.
No, because, like, in draft classes, first overall pick is as valuable as it comes, and you're supposed to
Yeah.
nail that every single time.
Yeah, and it's a
And
disappointment
if there's
you don't.
10 players better than you out of that draft class, and you're picking first overall, then that pick, in my opinion, is a bust, just based on the fact that you could have increased your franchise by like 10 other players right behind Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. But it's not to say that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has not turned out to be a decent NHL player. But whether or not he was first overall pick caliber, that's way different. If you had to redraft, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins would probably be like 15 to 20 range. And I think that just the fact that he fell that many spots after being selected first overall, that makes him a bust. But then if you're picking 10th overall and there's 30 players behind you that are better, or 15 to 20, then I think that that's a bust. It increases because of the fact that you're supposed to nail a first overall pick.
And again, I think we're on the exact same page here. The difference is we have a different definition of the word bust. Like, Marshall, we agree. We both agree that Nugent-Hopkins was not the right pick at number one. We both agree that there were a substantial number of players that would have been a better pick. And we also both agree that he is a quality player and a serviceable, above average, even top six forward. But we're never going to change each other's minds on the definition of the word bust. So let's move on here to another guy I'd like to touch on is kind of a guy who's had I don't want to call it a resurgence because he hasn't hit his former ceiling, but a better year than expected going in is James Neal, a guy who scored quite a few goals, definitely more than expected. What do you guys think? Like, what does he bring to the table? Do you think that his somewhat of a resurgence continues, or do you think that he goes back to just kind of being an albatross of a contract?
I think that this is an albatross of a contract. He started out really freaking hot, and then after that, just absolutely cooled off.
He definitely trailed off.
He's also minus 20, which leads the entire team. Dude, I do not have any confidence in James Neal, especially being like, their sixth highest scoring player. So,
yeah, I would agree. He is no longer the real deal.
No.
Yeah.
No longer.
No longer the real deal James Neal.
I think that, like you said, I think this is still obviously a terrible contract.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that he can be a serviceable third liner, which is good for them because they desperately need the wings. Sorry, I choked on water a little bit there. But I definitely think he's if you could get rid of him, you would, but he can help you in this playoffs to an extent. And I think the fact that he came out hot is maybe a good sign because with this like extended off season, maybe it's just that he wore down real quick. So if he can do it in another short burst, maybe you get something. Maybe he does something valuable for you.
Bro, this team's depth is abysmal.
Non-existent.
Yeah, it's really bad.
It's almost non-existent. It's not even. I wouldn't even say it's depth. I would just say it's the lack of any wingers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're fine at center, and like at center, I think this is like their depth is even, I'd say, solid. Like, I think a double A is a really good third line center, and I mean Kyra is fine on the fourth line. Like, their center depth is okay. It's just the wings in general. It's not that they aren't deep. It's that they don't exist. Like, you're playing Nugent-Hopkins on the wing, and your other guy is Kyler Yamamoto, who admittedly was really good, you know, right around a point per game as a rookie in about just under 30 games, I believe. But other than that, you don't have anything at wing.
Dude, it's... You have a guy that scored 110 points in 71 games. Then McDavid, I mean, there's nothing really else to say about that. Then Nugent-Hopkins had a decent year, put up 61 points, which, yeah, admittedly, that's a solid season. After that, their next highest scorer has 34 points. Dude.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's nothing. And, I mean, Kyler Yamamoto, I think, deserves some credit because he'll be back, and he was right around a point per game when he was playing, and I think you can expect him to be a solid top six forward. But you're right, they have... I mean, Double A came in late, so and he's a third line forward, but really they have 4 top 6 forwards, and they have Double A, and then the rest of their lineup on forward is just bodies.
It's bad, man.
And Len, we can also talk a little bit about goaltending here. Their two guys are Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen. I think I'd give Smith the start. Incredibly average, basically, is what I have to say about their goaltending. Like, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good. I think Mike Smith, you know, we saw him for Calgary last year. He kind of stole a game. He stole game 1, really the only reason Calgary didn't get swept. And then he played well in other games, but they were just overwhelmed. I think he could get hot, but any goalie could get hot. There's nothing here that sways me either way on the Oilers. What do you guys think of the goalie situation?
Yeah, the goalies aren't... Go ahead, Marshall.
Go ahead, Zach.
I would give Koskinen the start. I think he was starting before the season ended, and I think they found like kind of a road with Koskinen, and then the season ended. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Mike Smith has kind of, you know, played his career. In my opinion, he's about done in the league.
Dude,
but
he's 37.
Yeah, he's old. But I think Koskinen gets the start here.
Okay.
I agree here. I think Koskinen also gets a start. Koskinen is 31 though. I didn't even understand. Like, dude.
He's an older too. Like, not young, but
he's. I mean, I guess like average age for a goaltender, but I mean, he had better stats throughout the season. And dude, Mike Smith with the Flames last year was so freaking bad. Like in
the regular season.
Yeah.
He played solid in the playoffs.
Yeah, he did. Dude, the Avs would have swept them if it wasn't for Mike Smith.
Yeah, definitely, I agree, and I guess Koskinen definitely a good choice. I lean Smith because I like the track record of just particularly how he played last year, but I definitely understand the putting Koskinen up first, and I think that's probably what they will do. We'll have to see how it plays out. The other thing I want to I guess let's get into our verdicts. Marshall, what do you think of the Oilers?
I'm sorry to say, but I'm going pretender. If Mike Smith has 4 less points than a guy that you traded for, Taylor Hall with, they're pretenders. Mike Smith has 2 points. Adam Larson has 6. Pretenders, guys. Outside of Draisaitl and McDavid, if one of those two get hurt, dude, goodbye.
All right, Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, I got to go pretender here too. This team is just so top heavy that they're just gonna inevitably fall over. They just can't do it. So I got to go pretender.
Well, I will be the lone voice of I guess optimism here for the Oilers fans. I do think they're a contender, not a top end contender, but the way they played down the stretch really impressed me. Once they kind of had McDavid and Draisaitl playing on a line for a while, and then it was working for that line, but not for the rest of the roster. But once they spread it a little bit, they got McDavid coming out, and then Draisaitl kind of rolling right after him. It started working, and down the stretch, this was a really strong team. They made that push, kind of went from a fringe playoff team to a clear playoff team. Really made some noise second in the Pacific. I think that they have a shot. I think if everything goes right for them, they can make some noise. I love AA. I think, like I said, the wings are awful, but the centers are so good that they can balance it up a little bit. I think they're going to have a tough time, but I do think that they have a chance to contend.
McDavid and Draisaitl better be putting up 4 goals again.
Yeah.
They better be. But I think,
I will say this
isn't a top contender, but I think they could.
I will say this. It did impress me how well Draisaitl played when McDavid got hurt.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is a reason for optimism that Draisaitl's not solely reliant on McDavid, which everyone assumes that he is. But for a lot of the season, they weren't even playing together. So, I like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I think that they are as good of a 1-2 punch that we've seen in 20 years. I mean, since the Crosby and Malkin primetime era. But then the thing about that is the Crosby and primetime era, they surrounded their team with some semblance of depth and goaltending and defense. Whereas with this, I just don't see any of the above.
Yeah, like I said, I touched on it in the beginning. I think the management is holding this team back to an extent. The reason they're as good as they are is because of some of the easy, nobody would have disagreed with taking McDavid. Yes, it was the right pick, but did it require much work? And Draisaitl as well, a top guy in that class, obviously knocked the pick out of the park, but when you're picking at 3, it's not that hard to do. So, the talent that they do have was talent anyone could have gotten them. Yamamoto may be the only exception there, but I think this team should fire their general manager. They need to not rebuild, but retool a little bit.
Well, they did. They did fire the.
Oh yeah, they already did. So good on them.
Yeah.
Getting some things done, but I think this is a scary team in the future, just because they've got so much talent.
Depth,
if they can figure out how to find a winger, then they'll be a good team.
Really quick, do you think McDavid spends his entire career with Edmonton?
Ooh, that's tough.
They need to figure out.
Do.
Yeah, they need to figure out the management situation and start winning. But if that doesn't happen, then obviously the answer is no.
Yeah, if this is what he has to deal with, if the roster he's looking at today, if he has to deal with this for the duration of his contract, then no, he's out of there the day he can be, and he's signing with a contender. But
the Avs are always open, McDavid.
Right.
Come on through.
Yeah.
And I got a quick question about the Oilers
that salary
as well.
cap magic off, but yeah.
What's your question, Zach?
All right, so besides McDavid and Draisaitl, who's your guys' favorite player on the Oilers?
I mean,
Yamamoto.
It'd have to be a Nugent.
Yeah, Yamamoto. A nugget.
Well, best or favorite?
Favorite.
Because I love Yamamoto.
Right. I think he's a really solid player, but I'm going to go Darnell Nurse. I think he's really gritty. And he can lock it down. And
I think Bear deserves an honorable mention, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, favorite after those guys was Bear, not necessarily best.
Yeah. They have, some interesting young pieces, just not... It's just... They're missing the foundation, I guess, is
they got
the
Mike
issue
Green,
with the
too.
Oilers. Yeah. Kind of an old guy, but
Definitely
we'll see if he does anything. All right. Any last things to say here before we kind of get out of here?
Eric Johnson's pick was a bust.
And I disagree. But all right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We're going to go ahead and get out of here for today. Definitely check out our Avalanche podcast if you're a hockey fan, particularly an Avs fan. Right now we're talking a lot of hockey on there because there's not a ton of Avs-specific news. But we're having a good time with all these pods, and we'll see you in our next episode.